Okay, we're live. I'm here with my guest. I'm going to have Samantha introduce herself, and then we're going to get into the world of surfing, strength and conditioning, and all things Hawaii. So, Samantha, the floor is yours. Who are you? Where do you work? Talk about the athletes you're around. Just fill us in on everything about you.
Okay, thanks. My name's Samantha Campbell. I'm an athletic trainer. I went to school for athletic training at the University of Florida. I'm also a licensed massage therapist and certified strength and conditioning specialist. I own a really small facility in Haiku, Maui. We're on the North Shore. Most people really know us for kind of two things. There's Jaws. If you've heard about surfing, you've probably heard about Jaws. That's about 10 minutes from my facility. And then we have probably what's the most famous windsurfing beach in the world, Hokipa Beach Park. So that's our home break, where most of us spend as much time as we can there.
So, what is the name of your facility? What is the population there? How long have you been out in Hawaii? Like, did you just decide to move out there on a whim? Like, what brought you to Hawaii?
Yeah. So when I finished school, it was actually kind of funny. I had a conversation with my old supervisor today because I'm looking for a strength and conditioning professional now, or a personal trainer. And so I called him up because he moved sort of from the athletic training world into strength and conditioning as well. And so I was like, gosh, I've been here 17 years now. And he's like, I think he still thinks I'm coming back. And so yeah, I came out for an internship as part of my degree process. You did a semester internship. And so I came and worked with a bunch of windsurf and snow athletes, actually, kind of randomly. And I got out here and I kind of noticed, especially on Maui, that the environment that I had gone to school in, where you have these athletes and you have a training room and you have a place to go when you're hurt, like these guys were at really high levels and there was nobody to help them when they were hurt. They were sort of like going to the doctor, and the doctor might get them an x-ray, and then that was the end of the options. um so when I finished my internship, I opened up my business. It's called Deep Relief Peak Performance. And so basically just helping people when they had injuries. And so I tried to be like a one-stop training room. It was kind of right before the 2008 Olympics. So I knew about kinesiotaping, but a lot of people didn't. And so people would come and get worked on and get taped up, and then they'd be walking around. And it was like, if you had the blue tape on your shoulder, you started to figure out where you got it from, if that makes sense. So yeah, I started my business. I did some personal training, just to kind of get things going a little bit. And eventually the gym that I was personal training closed. And so we took a little corner of it and made our facility what it is today. And so right now we have four physical therapists. We have four massage therapists. We are down to two personal trainers. And so that's where we need a little bit of help right now. And then most of our, not most of, but a lot of our trainers and massage therapists cross over. So a lot of times, like when I see an athlete, we'll do a combination of manual therapy and exercise and conditioning. And so it's kind of a really nice blend of what we do.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a pretty cool one-stop shop that maybe wasn't necessarily there, and you kind of got ahead of the curve, setting up your facility there. Please excuse my ignorance on this, but talk to me about what windsurfing is, what it looks like, maybe the
Okay.
competition schedule, and then we can get into some training and what that kind of looks like for you.
Totally. So most of our athletes, what's kind of really different about surfing and windsurfing is the competitive schedule is in the summer for the most part. And then when the waves are really good in Hawaii is in the winter. So our athletes are definitely going year round. They're trying to perform. Most of them care more about the winter, but then the ones that are in the real competitive space, at the highest levels, then have to go win contests all summer. So that makes it pretty tricky. We don't get a normal preseason, off season block for those athletes. We're focusing more on power and injury recovery in the winter. And then we might be focusing more on quickness and agility in the summer because the waves tend to be smaller where they're competing. Not always, but they can be. And that's what's kind of crazy about water sports in general, is that, it's sort of like the soccer field changes shape every day, every hour. So you could be going for a contest and it's a place that's normally really big, heavy barrels. And so you could be training for that. And then you get there and it's windy and small and choppy, and you have to be able to pull out a completely different style of surfing to get through a heat.
Yeah, that's really fascinating to me, and it just makes me wonder what the training looks like, and then how is the culture of going to the weight room in the surf
Yeah,
community?
that's a great. So yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I was just a little bit ahead of when like training became cool and surfing. I would say as that was happening, I was already kind of doing my thing, and it became like, oh, I have this injury and I need to get better from it, to like, oh, I need to prepare my body differently than just surfing all the time, you know? So I got pretty lucky, I think, in that window that it started to become accepted as I was like a really young professional coming up. And so, I think our whole basis is really like you're going to perform your best when you are not injured. So that's really where we come from, is like let's try to prevent injury. Let's try to manage the niggles as they come up and stay ahead of it so that it's going to happen. Everybody's going to get injured, but if we can prioritize feeling good, then it's going to be a lot more consistent training and your performance is going to feel a lot better overall. And so I think that's pretty what's really unique about what, especially my programming. And I think the athletes that come to us they want that too. Like we just do a really extensive warm up. Like it seems really crazy the stuff that we do, but then you look, I think of like gymnasts and baseball players, and I'm like, you guys, like real athletes actually like they could warm up for a really long time before they play. Like for me, sometimes to get a young surfer to do 10 minutes of something on the beach before they paddle out is like, I promise it will help you. Just please try to do it. And then as the athletes get older and older, it's like they're coming in before class and doing their own specific stuff before they even get into like what our normal warm up is. So we're really heavy on the preparing your body to move and trying to support all of your joints and stability. Um we are very, we didn't even have a lot of weight, I would say, for the first like, let's see, maybe 4 years that I had my own facility. We didn't have a squat rack. And I was kind of like, okay, like my training group is now at the training age where I want them to lift heavier than they are. And we spent that kind of whole time just body weight, kettlebells, dumbbells, that sort of thing. And so everyone's getting comfortable with it, but I would still say generally we have a lot less load than almost any like field sport conditioning program that you would see.
Yeah, it would be really fascinating to me. And before we, started recording, is just my world has been baseball for so long, and now I'm just kind of expanding and having conversations with individuals like yourself. And it's really challenging me to think, if I was in this environment, how would I program? If I was in this environment, like how would I approach this athlete? How would I approach this culture? Like I've never been out surfing. I am honestly borderline afraid of the ocean. So it's like, how can I convince somebody that what I'm saying is relevant if I myself don't even want to get in the water? So, do you
Oh,
do your own surf? Let's say this:
no,
one, do
that's a
you
great
surf
question.
yourself? And then
Totally.
two, do you do surf skill with them in addition to weight room stuff?
So the answer to number 2 is absolutely not. Like yeah, if you're going to talk about, coaching, I would consider that like surf coaching. That's 100% not in my realm. Even my daughter's
Okay.
5, still like, we're just going. I'm not coaching her. um, but I would say, I mean, yes, I like the water. I've always loved the water. I've always been a water sport athlete. And so what has happened over the last, like 4 years is we've got all these crazy new water sports popping up. I don't know if you've ever seen anybody foiling or wing foiling or so. Yeah. So it's like if you took like a surfboard and you put a big long stick underneath it and then an airplane wing under that. And so now instead of surfing on the water, you're actually surfing above the water. Right.
Whoa.
And so people have been doing it in big waves for a really long time, but now it's a fun, you can do it downwinding and the technologies moving really fast. So if I always had to be good at what I was trying to coach, I would have a really hard time, you know? And so that's definitely like what I do when I surf is absolutely nothing like what my competitive surfers do when they surf, you know, like other than we're both laying on the board. um so it's really athlete led, you know, my programming, we start with everybody with like, what is your goal? How do you want to feel? How do you know when you feel that way? Can we have, you know, and sometimes with the kids, I'm just trying to get the whole concept of goal setting going. And it's like, I want to throw more spray. And I'm like, okay, find me a clip of what it looks like now in the kind of turn that you're talking about. And then let's get another one in 3 months, you know, and see like, can you throw more spray? Like, show me your best. And then I'll show you how to get stronger legs and a more connected core and a more explosive power. And then let's see if that turns into more spray on your turn.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me. So do you have any, let's say like weight room KPIs or any metrics that you're looking at, any data that you're using, or is it all just kind of connecting to more general principles of like building strength, building resilience, maybe some, dexterity or, spatial awareness or
Totally.
things like that so that when they're on the board, like what does that kind of look like?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. You know, basically if I say that, and I'm just going to use that example of throwing more spray for a, you know, like young kid who's
Mhm.
surfing a lot. And we say, okay, I want to see your box jump, your 90-degree box jump, and you're going to land that with really good form in your legs. Your knees aren't going to be caving in. You know, maybe we're going to try to get it a little higher, but maybe not, you know. So we would pick something like that. You know, if somebody wanted to have more explosive power, I would maybe measure how many pull-ups can we do. Let's get some more pull-ups. That's gonna, if we can do more pull-ups, that means your lats are working better in conjunction with your core. And hopefully that's going to turn into more powerful paddling. So we do try to like work backwards in that way. Like, what's your sport goal? How can I, in the weight room, approximate that so that we have a goal there? And then how do you subjectively feel on both of those things?
What does a typical day and week look like in your facility? Maybe for you overseeing the whole thing, and then specifically for your either your PTs, your massage, or your trainers, your coaches.
Totally. Yeah. So, you know, I at first it was just me. So I still have kind of my training group that I coach and that I program out. And then all of our classes, I'm writing them for the people that I'm programming, but other people can drop in and sign up. So there's a lot of athletes that are sort of along for the ride that maybe I'm not directly every day managing what they're doing, but they're going to be kind of on the same program as the people that I am. And so Mondays is our activation day. I just picked up also a morning class because my trainer's on maternity leave. So I teach her class in the morning, which it works out really nicely because we have some Zoom athlete or some distance athletes that jump in. So I have a big wave surfer right now with a knee injury who's never only ever come when he's really busted up. And so this last one, he's really committed to taking the rehab all the way through. And so that online, we do it like part in the gym and part online. And so that's a way to keep those guys still connected when they're traveling all the time, right? So that's the morning. And then in the evening, we do what I've always just called activation class. And the best way I can describe it is like if you took all of your like prevention programs, like your ankle prevention, shoulder prevention, low back prevention, and you just made it into like a fun class with some music and you're moving from station to station and everybody's kind of in there. We use the blaze pods sometimes in there for a little agility, and we try to just make it fun, but it's like you can check the box of like I turned my core on, turned on my posterior chain, I worked my shoulder stabilizers, and nobody's that tired. So it's sort of like Monday night we're just getting everything kind of going. Um Tuesday is usually our heavier strength program, so I'll block that out. So for example, throughout the winter, I had sort of the big wave surfers were doing that, you know, like hex bar deadlifts. We do it a little more compression-y, so it's less hingy when we use the hex bar. I basically hex bar instead of back squat. Most of our athletes didn't grow up lifting weights. Their spines, surfer spines, when you grow up surfing, it's like you just have this really flexible, long, weird spine. And so I find the hex bar is just like nice and safe. We can load it really heavy. Everybody's happy at the end of the day, and we're not
Yeah.
doing too much on back squats. But so like I'd have the big wave guys are doing a lot of hex. You know, some of it seems for whatever reason the girls, but a couple of the guys too. If you can front squat, that might be your choice because we only have one squat rack. So that's the other thing is I'm trying to like kind of split everybody up. And then our more endurance athletes were doing like a weighted dumbbell lunge progression. And so I sort of pick your lift and then we're progressing your lift throughout the season so that you're able to stay strong, but you're not overdoing it is what we're after in the winter. And then similar, I'll just kind of cycle through upper body just to really, we don't lift a ton of weight upper body. Most of our athletes are paddling and so they don't want to be too sore and they're getting a lot of work in their upper body already, but just enough just to keep everything talking basically. And then right now we're in our spring. So a lot of our surf athletes, if they're not competitive surfers, if they don't do contests, they will compete kind of fun foiling and downwinding. That was the sport I was saying is like a new thing is the foil downwinders. So it's a lot of endurance. It's really high heart rate. It's kind of crazy. So we're in a push up, pull up muscle endurance lower body block right now on Tuesdays. So that's Tuesdays normally your day that you're lifting and you're going to be a little bit sore. Wednesdays we have the kids in Grom camp is what we call it. And so we have a couple different classes and again, I'm just trying to get them to think about goal setting a little bit, try to straighten out their feet so that they've got, you know, a little bit of like we're just trying to develop some straight lines in their feet and knees and upper body strength, you know, being able to pull their own weight is you know, climb the rope, swing if they're little, we'll just have them swinging back and forth a lot. And then so Thursdays are my day that I'm sort of in the gym seeing people all day. And that's like where I try to get people either one-on-one or they're coming in to do their own whatever maintenance program they need to do. If we're in a building, like a preseason block, we'll usually throw in some kind of like heavier cardio training that day, either altitude running or deep sand kind of agility. We don't really do that year round, but we'll do it like a month at a time, depending where we are. Fridays, I try not to go in. It doesn't always work that way. A few of our athletes will do like an underwater workout, like a breath hold type training. Um, Especially obviously the big wave athletes, that's important for them to keep that up. Sometimes I'll go train with them in the pool. We don't really have good access to a pool. So it's just whoever has a friend who has a pool, who has some weights, and sometimes I'll jump in with them for that. And then Saturday is our sort of like power day, I would say. So we'll do a lot of plyometrics, medicine ball work, maybe some dumbbell snatches, that kind of thing on Saturdays.
Do you ever get to travel with them when they go to like their big events or whatever throughout the year?
Yeah, that's actually how I started, was more traveling with athletes than necessarily like before I had my own kind of place. I worked with my very good friend now, Julia was a ski racer for a long time. And so I would travel with her, you know, a month or two every year and do physio with her. We've had I work with Red Bull quite a lot. So they had a 6-man canoe team at one stage over on the Big Island, Hawaii Island. And so I traveled with them, would go over once a month, even just to their home base to try to get their program going. Our competitive surfers have anywhere, depending on what level of competition, from 2 to 4 events on Oahu. So that's like a 20-minute flight over. And so I try to spend, we don't really like, nobody has budget to have like me kind of hanging out there for 3 months at a time, but I'll go for 5 days and try to get everybody going and then come home for a little bit and go for another little chunk around the contest just to kind of keep everybody going over there too, which is really fun for me too, to be I'm sure you guys have the same thing. Like it was COVID was really frustrating just having no competitions and you're like, what are we even training for? And so it's such a like you still get that deep breath, like, oh, we're competing, we're trying to win something. This is really fun. And so it's nice to be able to get right back into that. Um,
Yeah, for me, the thing is, like, I've been in baseball for so long, and, like, every day you play,
you
and
have a game
then
every day. Yeah, yeah.
right, and now I'm in, a facility in Arizona where our training is all off-season training, so for me,
Right.
like, the training is really exciting, there's just no game attached to it for
Right.
me, so
Totally.
it's almost been just, like, a breath of fresh air to not feel the pressure of, like, we have to get ready to play
Right.
tonight, and we can kinda, like, map this out long term,
Yeah,
but
you can
then at
yeah,
some
cool.
point, like, it feels like it's gonna just be like, I need to go watch a game or something, like, just to feel the competitiveness of it, I guess. But the cool thing for me is, like, we have athletes from all over, all different sports, even within the same sport, different teams. So now, like, I can just go watch them play instead of being tied to one team. I'm sure that's probably very similar with surfing and everything. Is like you're connected more to the individuals and how they do
Correct.
versus
Yeah.
like one specific team. Is that probably that's probably
Yeah.
right?
100%. Yeah. So even that schedule like you're talking about, so even our competitive surfers have the most predictable schedule and even that is like okay, you have a 2-week window for each contest, right? So you know where you're surfing for those 2 weeks, but you don't know what day out of the 2 weeks you'll surf or how far into it you're going to get or how many heats you're going to surf in the day or what time you're going to it's like so you're really, right now, like I have two surfers in Australia that are about to do a big contest that starts tomorrow. And so it's like we're kind of like, okay, guys, like when do you think you'll run? And we're just modifying the schedule hourly almost like based on like what it looks like. Okay, we gotta change it up a little bit. Or if you it and the tricky part that I think a lot of surfers get into is you want to be rested for the contest, but if you spend the whole season never training in a contest window, then you're gonna be really like detrained by the end, you know?
Yeah, that's what we ran into. That's what I had run into with baseball early on was our relievers. It was like, well, I don't want to lift on a day I'm going to pitch, but then you don't know when you're going to actually pitch. And then,
Totally.
well, if I pitch today, I'll lift tomorrow. And then they don't pitch, and then it's the same thing, and the same. And then before you know it, it's like 2 weeks has gone by, and then if they do any training, they get sore, and then they don't want to train
Yep,
again. And so
totally.
I just keep coming back to earlier when you said, the field or for you, the arena changes hourly. It's like, how would that look for a competition? Then you just brought it up. So I'm glad you did because it's like a 2 week window of you may go every day, you may go multiple times a day, you may not go 4 days because the weather and the waves and all of that is just there's so many factors to think about with all of that that I'm sure logistically it's probably a nightmare to try to be like, hey, I need you to do this, but also I need you to be ready, but also I don't want you to be sore, but also you're gonna be detrained. Like all of those factors have to come into play for you. And I think you've been doing it for a long time, it sounds like. So is that just best learned through experience, trial and error? Is it like how
I
have
think
you
that
navigated that?
yeah, that's a great I think, it comes back to that kind of athlete focus, and it's saying like, "Okay, here's our options," right? Like, what resonates well with you? And so I think, I definitely like even to the extent of like, okay, are we going to use this block to train and put on some muscle before we go into contests when it's going to be hard to train, or are we going to use this block to surf a lot, or how much can we do both of those things and just having that open dialogue back and forth of like, hey, what do you think about this? And I really like, I love it when the athletes have ideas, when they have input. Hey, can we try this? Like, I'm always open to facilitating that. And I always want them to like have lots of different input so that we can then just put it like, I almost sometimes feel like I'm just like the scheduler, Like I'm just trying to put the puzzle pieces together so that at the end of the day, they feel really good when they want to feel really good, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense to me totally. Just from my baseball, just like I wanna feel good, but also we need to train, so
Yeah, totally, totally. And what's even crazier with the big wave, like this season, they didn't have a contest. Like there was nothing. So we did a whole big up. It was a big hype. Like the weather systems were looking like it was going to be an amazing year. It's been, 2017 was okay. 2015 was really our last like amazing winter. And so everybody was like, I'm gonna train. Everybody started training early, like they were like a month early, like, okay, let's go. I want to be fit. And then it was just like not that good, and it was the kind of not that good that can get you hurt really fast. And so then you're battling this like, okay, how am I prepared? We don't know if any of these next 10 days are going to be any good, but if I don't send it on this day and that ends up being my best chance at a wave, then that could have been my whole winter. And now I'm like, I've got sponsorships I need to deal with, and I've got, so they're kind of battling this like, do I go? Do I not go? Do I go on this wave even though I might wipe out? Or do I, like, do I try to just catch one good wave for the winter, even if it's scary? And then I'm on the back end just trying to, like, okay, come in, let's clean up whatever doesn't feel good, get you ready to go tomorrow in case tomorrow's good, you know?
that's so crazy to me. It's just like you could be training for all of this just for nothing.
I mean, it wasn't nothing, but it sort of like felt like everybody felt really like unfulfilled. Like we kind of got to even us small wave surfers because it was just like the wind was a weird direction and it was like big waves, but not good big waves. And so all of us were like, wait, where was my moment of glory? And if you're just a recreational surfer, it's like, oh, whatever, but if that's your job, it's like, seriously, that's like what we got this year, you know?
That's so crazy. I mean, Mother Nature is always going to win. You're never going to fight her. But do you see a lot of similar injuries, or is it just so case dependent on the weather and the waves and everything that, like, anything kind of goes?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I would say with surfers, primarily knees are our biggest problem. MCL is pretty common in surfers. If you just even think about the way their stance is, they're sort of predisposed to that valgus force and then the wave coming down and hitting them on the knee, or a lot of times you can get the split. So like one foot slides off and you've got that really medial knee force. I spend a lot of time with the kids just trying to educate them on like not just surfing, like do some bike riding, play some pickleball, play some basketball, like go running, like anything that's more linear to help balance the rotation there. I always feel like is really going to help their knees. Um so we have those more acute knee injuries, sometimes chronic, but mostly acute knee injuries. I mean, everybody's got shoulder niggles, neck niggles, low back niggles. Like, I think that's kind of consistent over any sport, really. Like, you're just going to have that overuse type thing. Um, every now and then we have ankles. We have a sesamoid fracture right now, which none of us saw coming. And so it's like, what? When did that even happen? So it's nice to get nice to get the different ones in there every now and then that you get to manage.
Yeah, yeah, hey, thank you for coming in with a new injury I haven't
Yeah.
seen. Here's a challenge for me.
Yeah.
Do you see the culture starting to change now that you have kids coming in, you have, adults that have been around a while and they're starting to see the value of training, the value of taking care of their bodies? Is it becoming more and more commonplace for kids to actually like weight train and take care of their bodies, or is that still a battle that you're kind of fighting long term?
I mean, I think it's both. I think general, Maui is a place where people like to be really active. They want their body to be able to do what they're asking for it. And so, in that respect, like I don't see people I see people like using their disposable income to make their body feel better. Like we're trying to maximize their insurance, but it's pretty common that we're doing things outside of what insurance will cover just so they feel good. I think on the flip side of that, when there's lots of fun stuff to do outside, it's hard to prioritize coming into the gym, right? So it's kind of that back and forth of like, trying to keep people consistent so that they're not getting like what you're saying, like, oh, you haven't come in 2 weeks and now you're really sore, right? Like, so there's that back and forth. I would say, especially with the kids, it's like they never want to miss a swell. So it's, like, but the way I've kind of come to look at it is if they can be inconsistently consistent. So if I'm seeing them, like even if they've only made it in once a month, but we've been doing this for 5 years, like hopefully something has sunk in a little bit there.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I was living in Boston before this, and it was really hard to just get outside. So I would spend more time in the gym. And now I live in Phoenix, and the weather's starting to get better and better. And I find myself more and more outdoors and less wanting to just lift weights. And I've gotten into rock climbing recently, and
Oh,
like I
nice.
just want
Yeah.
to climb the walls and do less strength training. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, I'm getting good, but also I still need to strength train. I don't want to give up the strength training for the climbing, but I like maybe I start making a transition. I'm like, I just don't want to go and like just be outside all the time and never lift weights.
Hmm.
Because then you start having aches and pains and things like that. Or when you do lift the weights, you get sore, and then you're like, I really don't want to go back. So like I can totally appreciate just wanting to be outside and like that being part of the culture. And I think just hearing you speak about like how inconsistent the weather is and like not knowing and like having that uncertainty,
Yeah.
like when there's a chance to surf and catch a big wave, like you're gonna take that over going to the weight room 9 out of 10
Totally. And so
times.
that's why we tend to push our training to the evening. So there's kind of two things with that. The first thing, and we have plenty of people that train in the morning too, but my group, I like that evening because you know what you have left in the tank that day. And so, but there's definitely times where we implemented, I have like a 6 hour cancellation policy now, which is up from 2 hours because it was just getting so like people are so indecisive. Like, oh, I'm going to come to, oh, no, wait, but oh, actually, it wasn't that good. So now I'm going to come back to class. And I'm like, okay, look, here's the deal. Like, you need to decide by lunchtime if you're going to show up at class or not. And if you can't decide, I don't really care, but you're going to lose your $15, right? Like, so it just got to be like, and I go through it myself too. And sometimes I think that's the other nice thing I tell people, it's like, look, if you're too tired, come and do the first half of the class, right? Because that's going to make you feel good. And then you do one set instead of 4 sets of whatever we're doing, just so you're kind of staying moving.
Mhm. It's funny, I was actually having a conversation with an NFL strength coach the other day, and he was talking the same thing. He's like, there are times where guys get beat up and they'll come in and they're like, Coach, I don't have it today. And he's like, just do the warm up and just see how you
Yeah.
feel after the warm up. And 9 out of 10 times, those guys are just going to go through the workout and they may need to modify it, but they'll feel good enough to at least do something that puts them in a better spot long term versus like, yeah, I don't have it today. I'm just not going to do anything. And it almost sets you back because you just don't move your body. You just kind of give into that, like,
And
I don't need to do it.
I think it's tough. I mean, it's tough for me and I have a small group, but I can't imagine like managing a whole NFL team where you're trying to make a plan B for multiple different athletes at the same time. And so I'll have the workout and I have in my head like this person needs to do this and this person needs to do, and sometimes I'll say it or sometimes I'll be like, okay, short bus is you. You're going to all be in the same group and then you're going to remind me to tell you what you're going to do differently. And so we try to kind of that way they still come, they're still interacting with everybody. They're still getting some good training in, but we're just going to try to tweak it so that they're moving themselves forward instead of back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Samantha, this has been really awesome. I don't want to take too much of your time. Before I let you go, though, is there just anything that we've missed? Anything that we really need to hit on? Anything you want to talk about surf wise, training wise, life in Hawaii wise? Like, I am really looking forward to just keeping an open dialogue, hoping to come visit you. Honestly, now that I'm in Phoenix, I'd love to come see the facility. I'd love to come out to Maui, but just before we sign off here, for any listeners, just is there anything that we missed?
Yeah, totally. I would say vice versa. Like I always love learning from other professionals in different avenues and we love having people come in too. So, if you have any listeners that are on Maui, want to come check out, want to come take a class, like even want to come work for 6 weeks or 3 months, like that's kind of the culture here is that people are really like rotating around. And so anytime we can have somebody come in and teach us what they know, that's always really exciting.
Well, I will definitely take you up on it now that I'm on the West Coast. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate the initial connection here, and I look forward to just future conversations with you.
All right. Thanks so much.